What's up guys, Marcus here from Studio One Expert, and I'm here on behalf of my good friends from PreSonus who've asked me to do a little overview video on the brand new CTC1. So the CTC1 is a next generation of mix effects plugins developed by PreSonus. And as we know from the console shaper, they've been developed using state space modeling. Alright, so at a quick glance you can see here that we have 3 tabs in the top left of the CTC1 over here. So in the first one, we've got a classic console emulation. And this is modeled after a widely used British vintage console. Next up, we've got a tube over here. And this model is based on a legendary British tube console built in the late 1950s, currently housed at one of the most popular recording studios in the world. And then lastly, we've got a custom algorithm over here. And this was developed by the team at PreSonus. And this is kind of like a Frankenstein, if you will, where they've basically chosen specific features from different consoles and basically bundled them together into one package, which they call the custom console. And this can really be characterized by its hi-fi sound. Okay, so let's hop back over to the classic console emulation over here. Now, one of the things that you'll notice right off the bat here is we have this boost button over here. And essentially what this does is when we engage the boost, it automatically brings us to plus 18 dBs of gain on the input stage of the CTC1. So if you're the type of person that likes to record at really conservative levels, this would be a really quick way that you can get the CTC1 to start affecting your tracks. Now, in addition to having the plus 18 here on the boost, we can also dial in additional gain as well. So for instance, if I was looking at all my tracks over here, and let's just highlight all of them and bring them down by 12 dB, I can do a little bit of a data zoom to bring this up here, then what I might want to do to have them impacted by the CTC1 is do a quick boost. And if I needed more, I can bring up some more over here on this dial. So again, that's plus 18 dB of drive at the input gain stage. But be careful with this because a little goes a long way. Okay, so let's deactivate the plus 18. We'll bring this around plus 12. And then I'm just going to take all my audio events here and let's bring them back up to where they were. Okay, so next up in the noise section, they've made some improvements to the noise section over here. So let's go ahead and let's just bring up a spectrum meter over here. And what I'm going to do is I've got the noise dialed up all the way here. And let's go ahead and deactivate this noise gate. So you can see we have a noise floor here. And if I bring this down, you'll see that that will start to drop. And if I bring it back up, it comes up again. Now watch what happens when I click this noise gate in. So this is really useful for killing the noise in certain sections where you don't have any audio playing. Because a lot of the times with a console, the noise is actually part of the non-linear characteristics that are adding a certain vibe or character to a console. So sometimes you may find that having a little bit of noise actually adds to your tracks instead of being a hindrance. But having said that, when you have a lot of these different instances stacked up on top of each other, the noise can get a little bit out of hand. So having this noise gate allows you to really quickly remedy that. This is especially useful when you need to bounce something out and you're worried about a noise floor creeping in at the end of your song if you have a fade out. Okay, so let's just enable that noise gate for now and I'll pull this back down. Now next up we have the crosstalk, and this is another area where we see some drastic improvements over the previous generation of the console shaper. So we always had the ability to dial in some crosstalk, and in the console shaper what it was basically doing is adding a certain amount of spill from the other tracks into each individual channel on the console. But what they've actually done for the CTC1 is they've gone a step deeper with this, and they've actually modeled a realistic behavior of what a console would do. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically the crosstalk now looks to adjacent channels in the console with respect to crosstalk, meaning that the further away a given channel is from another one, the lesser the amount of crosstalk that you'll get. All right, so let's just pass some audio through here to do a test. So first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and solo my kick. You'll notice that I've got some subgroups set up here. I've got my kicks both sent out to a kick bus, my snares both sent out to a snare bus, and then I've got my toms sent out to a tom bus. So let's go ahead here, let's solo this kick bus, and I'm just going to play from the top. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the noise out for now because we don't need it. And let's go ahead, let's push our crosstalk all the way up, and we'll start off with the crosstalk deactivated. Okay, so you can hear we have a kick drum mic here, and this is actually a live set of drums, so we've got a little bit of bleed happening from the snare. Now watch what happens when I engage the crosstalk at 100%. Okay, so you can hear when I engage the crosstalk, we're getting a lot of snare coming in. But now watch what happens if I was to take these set of kick drum tracks and bring them to an entirely different location that was further away from the snare bus. For instance, let's bring them all the way down here. Now I'm going to go ahead and let's take our crosstalk off. Let's solo that same kick from the same point. So you can hear a huge difference there. So let's listen to the adjacent tracks beside our kick drum bus now. So this one will be the kick side. Now let's listen to this U67 over here. So you can hear that both of these tracks are now having an effect on the kick when we have the crosstalk enabled and set to 100%. Have a listen to that again. And let's bring those tracks down to the very beginning where they were. So they've gone extremely deep with this. Our crosstalk is now recognizing how close the other channels in the console are. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's dial this down a little bit over here. Now next up, we've got character. And the best way to describe character is that character is like a sonic signature, or let's say a sonic fingerprint of each console. So regardless of whether you have any EQ or dynamics that are instantiated on a console through a channel strip, it's going to have its own sound, it's going to have its own vibe, it's going to have its own mojo, something that it's imparting on the source tracks. So we've got this parameter over here where we have a range from 1 all the way up to 10. So we can think of 1 as a 1-to-1 ratio of the sonic signature or the sonic fingerprint of any given console emulation that we've dialed in. So for example, classic or tube. And then as we move up, we can think of this as a character enhance function. That's basically exaggerating the non-linearities in this console or that sonic fingerprint, and it's exaggerating them to have more of an effect. Now with respect to custom, like I said, this is a little bit more of a Frankenstein. So whereby the classic and the tube operate from a range of 1 to 10, where it's basically acting as a character enhance. When it comes to the custom algorithm, this could be doing any number of different things, like for example, simulating passing through the same audio through the console more than one time. So you're definitely going to want to play with the character on the custom algorithm. Now next up, you'll notice that we have this gain compensation section, and we've got two options now, whereby the previous generation of the console shaper, any gain compensation was done on a bus level. But with the CTC1, we can choose to either do our gain compensation on a bus level or on the individual channels, so that any gain compensation from the Pro Console Shaper is happening at the mix engine level before the signal arrives at our console. Now essentially what this means is that the CTC1 is doing its best to make sure that the level of the audio coming into the console on each channel is not changing. So if we've added an excessive amount of drive, like for example 12 or 18 dB of drive, that we're not altering the level that's coming into the console, and we're not throwing off any dynamics processing or EQ or compression, something that's sensitive to the levels that are coming in pre-fader. Now this is my personal preference for working with the CTC1. Now last up, we've got the master section here. And as you might expect, this will allow us to trim either minus or plus 18 dB on the master. So as the audio is coming back through from the individual channels into the main outs where I have my CTC1 instantiated, if there is any level match difference or a perceived difference in level, I can go ahead and match that by fine-tuning the master output level before it's coming into the main outs channel on my console. Okay, so now that we've gone over all of the main functions of the CTC1, let's go ahead now and have a quick listen to some of these different consoles. And I just want to give a big shout out to our friends at Looploft who've been courteous enough to provide me with these amazing sounding raw drum tracks for this demonstration. So we'll start off with the classic. Can bring down our drive a little bit here. We've got our character at 100%. Let's bring in some crosstalk. And we'll bring in our master. Maybe we'll add a little bit of noise. Okay, I like those settings as a starting point. Maybe I'll push this a little bit more. And let's go ahead and switch to the tube. So you can see a drastic difference in sound there. Big bottom end on this one. And this is doing something really nice to the mid-range, getting some good saturation in there. Custom is doing its own thing. Like I said, kind of think of that hi-fi smiley face EQ. Maybe bring up a little bit of noise here. pull our character down a little bit. Okay, so the idea with this type of workflow is that you want to settle on an algorithm or a console emulation that you feel is best suited for the program material that you're working with. Now, in this particular case, I happen to really like the tube console emulation. So let's go ahead and deactivate this for a second. We'll play from the top. So this is the sound of the native audio engine playing in Studio One. Now we've got our tube emulation here. I really like what this is doing. A bit of a toss-up between the classic and the tube. So custom. Let's go back to the tube. I might dial up a little bit more crosstalk. Okay, so I really like what that's doing. But one thing that you might notice is that we're getting a slightly different sound when we're running our audio through the tube emulation. Now, this isn't something that you need to worry about, because the way that you need to think about this type of mixing approach is that you are starting off with a new blank slate. So if you have to rebalance any faders or add some subtle EQ moves to compensate for some frequencies that have either been added or removed, that's not a huge deal. So for example, when I listen to this kick track now, it doesn't sound as full as it did before. But that's nothing that we can't solve by adding a simple EQ to make up for this level here. So let's go ahead and let's bring in our Pro EQ, and I'm going to bring this in. Let's go ahead and make an adjustment to this. So I could bring this up here, pull down my filter, and then I can compensate at the frequency that I want. Bring this up a little bit, widen this out. Okay, so now I feel like we've beefed up some of that bottom end on the kick that we lost. But I really like what this tube console emulation is doing for the snare and the rest of the kit. So that's the basic premise with using the Mix Engine Effects, the CTC1 Pro Console Shaper. Is you want to scroll through, you want to make adjustments to your drive, your noise, your crosstalk, character, and then you can set your master level, choose your gain compensation, and essentially you're trying to sculpt your tracks into a better sounding starting point, or at least add some character or vibe to them before you start your mix. So anyways, it's been a pleasure for me to show you this brand new CTC1 plugin. I think it's a fantastic next step for our Mix Effects plugins platform. I hope you guys got something from this, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.